A quarterback trade has been made, but it's not Jimmy G. Baker Mayfield gets traded to the Panthers. We are going to talk about how that affects the Jimmy G market, plus more 49er news. I got my baby bro, Rohan Chakravarthi, on with me. Stay tuned. Welcome back, fam. Thank you so much for joining in to So Real Sports Talk TV. I am your host, So Real Sunil. I got baby bro on, Rohan Chakravarthi from All 49ers Web Zone. How's it going, man? How's everything going? How do you like the little makeover, my dude?
I mean, I saw the beginning and I was like, just a little surprised, you know. I was like, oh, like I heard the click, 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 and I was like, oh, what's going on here? You know, we've got a new backdrop. We've got the new intro for the new So Real Sunil. I'm rocking with it. I like it.
I love it. I love it. Yes, got to give some shout outs. This new decor over here, you know, the little overlay and whatnot. Obviously, that's with my guy, Jesse Naylor from Last Second Sports. You know, he definitely hooked that up for me. A little different looking than the intro video. Got to give it up to my boy Beto from 49er Sickness Podcast. Put together a real sick intro video. So got to appreciate it, man. And that's one thing I love, Rohan. You do the same kind of stuff for me as well. Like, it's just the 49er community, this content creation community. Everybody's really looking to help each other out. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say everybody, but, you know, for the most part, you can find really good, you know, people that'll help you out. Beto's definitely one of them. Jesse's definitely one of them. You, Rohan, are definitely one of them as well. 49ers throwback, Mr. Fernando. He's not quite a content creator, but he's definitely one of them. Definitely hooking it up for all his content creators. So did want to give a shout out to all the content creators out there that definitely, even though we are competing for views and all that type of stuff, still are willing to, you know, help everybody up. I always think, you know, rising tides lift all boats. I would love for everybody to just have multiple thousands of subscribers, make money, and, you know, be able to do the fun things that we like doing. So gave out a little few shout outs, Rohan.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like you just heard, So Real Sunil, you know, he's one of the best in the game. You got to make sure you subscribe, get him back to that 1,000 before the season starts. You know what it is. And make sure you subscribe to my channel as well. Got content popping all over. Yeah, 49ers Throwback says at 896. He's almost at 900. Make sure you hit 900, then hit that 1,000. You got to make sure you subscribe to this channel right here for this content.
Appreciate it. And Rohan's links are in the description of this video. So before you leave, make sure to go click on his and let's get him. I want you to be at close to 500, bro, before the season starts. So I know you're, you know, mid 200s. Yeah, so we could double that up, Rohan. You know, it's funny because I get so many compliments about you from people around the community. They're always, you know, talking about you. I think you've mentioned how many people reach out from you, and I see you on these different shows, and I'm like, how did you know about Rohan? And they're like, I saw him on your show. And I'm like, that's awesome, because you are definitely, I think, one of the most underrated guys in the content creation realm. So definitely need to get you up there as well. Raphael 562 what's up, Sunil, Rohan, and everybody? Thank you guys for joining into the show today. And I believe it's going to be a great one because there's a lot of news out there. Well, actually, one big piece of news that I think affects a lot of different things, specifically with the 49ers. and that is Baker Mayfield finally got traded, right? And that kind of was the shoe that we were waiting to drop. And unfortunately, I think for some of the faithful that wanted to see Jimmy G move, he did go to a destination that a lot of people thought might be in contention for Jimmy G, which was the Carolina Panthers. And what was interesting about this, Rohan, is the Browns did eat a majority of the contract. They're eating about 13 million of the 18 million. So it's really only 5 million that Carolina's on the hook for. And when you look at it at that price, 5 million versus Jimmy Garoppolo's 25 million, it kind of is a no-brainer, right? And they only gave up a conditional fifth, so at the most a fourth round draft pick. So one, what do you think about this trade?
Oh, in 2024, it isn't even this year that they're getting this fifth round conditional pick.
So it's really nothing that's going to affect pretty much the cap this year or draft capital next year. So what do you make of this overall trade, Rohan? Who do you think was the winner? Who do you think was the loser? And then once we talk about that for a little bit, we'll go into what this actually means for Jimmy Garoppolo.
And I mean, when we start with it, the Browns were always going to be losers in this situation. First of all, they botched the Baker Mayfield situation when Deshaun Watson, during the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, and made that relationship just so it could be unsalvageable. I think Baker Mayfield is a better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett, and now that it seems as if Deshaun Watson will not be with the Browns for at least a part of the season, if not the entire season, you just lost your chance at having a quarterback, which was integrated with your system and now fully healthy. You just lost the chance to have that quarterback lead your team for 2022 for one last run before handing it over. So I automatically thought this would be a loss for the Browns. And then looking at the compensation, not only did they eat $10 million of Baker Mayfield's $18 million salary, which got reduced to 15, so it's 2/3 of the salary they ate, and they only get a fifth round pick, a conditional fifth round pick in return that isn't even this year. It's next year, which doesn't have any impact for this season or next season. So to me, I'd say the Browns are losers, but I don't necessarily think the Carolina Panthers are winners either. And it's not just because of this move. Carolina has consistently tried the same strategy, going out for a veteran quarterback that hasn't necessarily looked great, but has shown flashes and tried to make the mold of it. They haven't tried to develop a quarterback yet. They continuously try and overpay for quarterbacks. Teddy Bridgewater, average quarterback at best, they paid him $60 million. Then you had, after that, it was Cam Newton, who they paid a good amount of money to. Well, they had PJ Walker start at times. They had Kyle Allen start at times. Taylor Heineke start at times. I could go name after name of just mediocrity that they're starting at quarterback. And so the Carolina Panthers, once again, did not address the quarterback's situation early. They didn't have early picks other than pick number 6. They didn't address it early, and they haven't addressed it early in the last couple of drafts as well under Matt Rule. This probably saved Matt Rule's job for another year because Baker Mayfield won't make you the worst team in the division, I think. The Atlanta Falcons will now be the worst team in that division. But to me, I don't think the Carolina Panthers are clear winners, although they ended up with a better outcome in this deal.
You know what's interesting about this deal, Rohan, is I don't know if this necessarily means that Baker Mayfield is a starter in Carolina. Because when you're really paying a guy $5 million, right? And he's coming in and he's kind of behind the 8 ball, right? Because Sam Darnold, they just got a brand new offensive coordinator. Sam Darnold has been with this offensive coordinator throughout the whole offseason program. He, probably has a leg up, knows the team a little bit better. They're actually paying Sam Darnold a lot more than they're paying Baker Mayfield. And the thing that's interesting about this to me is I don't know if Baker Mayfield is that big of an upgrade over Sam Darnold. Like, I do think that this is going to be one where there has to be an actual QB competition, right? Training camp, they probably split the reps down the middle and see, who ends up playing the best. And maybe that helps both of them, kind of rising tides lift all boats type situation. But I don't know if this is a quarterback room that can coexist. Like if, say, for example, Sam Darnold ends up beating out Baker Mayfield in training camp, is Baker Mayfield the type of personality to be a backup quarterback and not ruin the locker room there? And vice versa, if Sam Darnold gets beat out, does he still want to be in Carolina as a backup quarterback? Is he going to play the role of, support staff for Baker Mayfield? Like, I just don't know if this really solves the quarterback situation for Carolina. And I saw a tweet out there. Somebody posted the amount of picks that the Carolina Panthers have, put towards the quarterback position. And it's led to a quarterback room of Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Matt Corral, right? So it's like this team, to piggyback off your point, really hasn't hit on this quarterback position in quite some time. And it doesn't matter really who has been, the head coach there. They haven't really had a good quarterback there since, Cam Newton's MVP run. But yeah, man, I don't know if this means that Baker Mayfield is necessarily the starter. It just seems like for $5 million, you're just kind of taking a flyer to see if maybe he is better than Sam Darnold. And then maybe Sam Darnold's on the move after that. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring that up because I've been following the Carolina Panthers beat writers just because of the Jimmy Garoppolo situation. I've been following how Sam Darnold's been doing. At the beginning of OTAs, Sam Darnold sucked. If we're just being clear, Sam Darnold was not good at the beginning of OTAs, according to those at the scene. But he did steadily improve under Ben McAdoo as OTAs progressed, and was pretty sharp at the end of OTAs. By pretty sharp, it's obviously to Sam Darnold standards. It's not necessarily to an elite quarterback standards, but he was improved, it seems, and that is without pads on. Now, Sam Darnold hasn't necessarily shown much on the field when it's real life game to necessarily warrant more than that. But when we look at Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold fully healthy, now remember last year Baker Mayfield was limited because he had, I think it was a torn labrum in both of his shoulders, making it difficult for him to throw. I think that really significantly hindered him. In 2020, when he was playing, he threw for 3,560 yards, 26 touchdowns, and only 8 interceptions. He's not necessarily an amazing quarterback. He won't necessarily raise your ceiling a significant amount, but I don't think that he's as bad as Sam Darnold is. I think Sam Darnold is much worse. Sam Darnold is more turnover prone, and Sam Darnold just isn't as accurate. Baker Mayfield is not that accurate either. He only completed 62% of his passes. That's saying something that Sam Darnold, in my opinion, is just a less accurate quarterback. And when you look at Sam Darnold and his improvement, right, last year he was supposed to be a lot better, really, than his New York Jets days. He now had DJ Moore. He had Robbie Anderson, 2 top receivers. I know the offensive line was patchwork, but he had 2 top receivers to finally throw the ball to. And Sam Darnold didn't look much better at all. He threw only 60% of his passes were completed, 9 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and was benched a couple of times for PJ Walker, who is an XFL level quarterback, right? So to me, I think if Sam Darnold ends up being your starter week 1, the Carolina Panthers once again blundered the situation because not only did you create controversy within your quarterback room and some turmoil, you brought in a quarterback, and if he's going to be your backup, he's going to be your backup. But I think that that's a complete issue, and I think Matt Rule loses his job if Sam Darnold ends up being the quarterback for the Carolina Panthers this year, because I don't think he elevates them much more than a 4 or 5 win team.
Yeah, I don't know if necessarily starting Baker saves his job either. Because the thing about it is, Baker Mayfield has been in the league for 4 years, and he's had way more talent around him than Sam Darnold has. And I think that, obviously it's tough for Baker because he had like a brand new coach. It seems like every year that he was a starter there, right. And his best coach was Kevin Stefanski. So clearly I think he gets some kind of pass there from most people because of the overturn. But when it comes to just talent, he's always been behind a really good offensive line. He's always had one of the best rushing attacks in the game. He's always had a really strong defense, and doesn't matter who his coach was. That are just things that he was blessed with really good receivers, and he's never really put up crazy numbers either, Rohan. So now he's actually going to a team where he's not going to have a good offensive line. He's not going to have as good of weapons, right? And the defense is not even close to the level of defense that he had with Cleveland. So, and it wasn't like his numbers were that great with Cleveland. So, I don't know. Like, to me, I think it makes sense just because you're bringing in a new body, but I don't really necessarily think this. Like, I'm not necessarily saying, oh, now that Baker Mayfield's in the books, Carolina is now that much better. Like, I don't think this moves the needle as far as where I think they're going to finish in their division. And I don't think this gets them any closer to being a playoff team. I don't know. Do you think this changes anything as far as how they're going to finish the season?
No, I don't. But I think that this shows. I think this move makes them more improved than last year, and I think that that's more important. For me, it's not. I'm not looking for significant growth, right? At least when we're talking about Matt Rule's job security, what Matt Rule has to show every single year is that he has the ability to improve, and he's not a good head coach. Let me make that clear. I don't believe he's a good head coach. I think that honestly, if I'm the Carolina Panthers, he's fired after this year, and you move forward with whoever the quarterback is. You move forward with that quarterback in a new system. They fired Joe Brady. I don't understand why for as their offensive coordinator, or they hired Ben McAdoo. And one funny thing that I'll mention, Ben McAdoo said that Baker Mayfield was the worst quarterback in his class back in 2018 when with the New York Giants, and now he's his offensive coordinator. So
Right.
that I think is going to be fun. I can see what you mean in that Mayfield has had better weapons. I just personally think he's the better player. It doesn't significantly improve them. I don't think that they will end the year with a winning record. I think they still end around the 7-10 range, probably at best, or something like that. But I do think this significantly improves them above the Atlanta Falcons. Whereas if Sam Darnold was starting, I think they'd end with similar roster or similar records.
Interesting, man. I actually have more faith in Mariota than both of these quarterbacks just because of his athleticism. So that's going to be interesting to see, like, who ends up the fourth in that division, because I think we both think, obviously, Tampa won. I think the Saints are better than these two teams as well. So that's going to be interesting. But look, we're not here to break down the Carolina Panthers, Rohan. Baker Mayfield got traded to the Panthers. The only reason we're talking about it is because Jimmy Garoppolo is still on the 49ers. And obviously, this is another seat in musical chairs that was filled. So now, what do you think this means for the Jimmy Garoppolo saga with the 49ers? And how do you think this ends now that one of the viable options for them is taken off the books?
I think now it does make it a lot. At least I was talking with John Chapman earlier today. He thought it makes it easier or he makes the Garoppolo trade market a little more likely. I think the opposite. I think that it makes it a little less likely because right now the only team, in my opinion, that is really in like looking for Garoppolo services is the Cleveland Browns. Realistically, a lot of people have pointed out the Seattle Seahawks. My objection to that is that the Seattle Seahawks, if they sign Jimmy Garoppolo or trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, they elevate their floor for 2022, and they're stuck in misery for the year after because they don't have anywhere to go. Garoppolo likely leaves after next year. I don't think he signs an extension there because he wants to be in a place that better surrounds him with weapons. And I think that after maybe a 7-10 season or a 6-11 season, guess what? You're not in the range for one of the top quarterbacks in a quarterback heavy class next year, and that might rebuild back a little more. I think the best way for for the Seattle Seahawks to rebuild and get back to contention is getting a top draft pick next year, getting your quarterback of the future, and surrounding that quarterback with talent like you have right now in DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and the running game that you have right there in Seattle. So to me, I don't think Seattle is in the market for Jimmy Garoppolo, be it via trade or be it via a release by the 49ers. And additionally, if Garoppolo is released by the 49ers, I don't think he'd pick Seattle. I don't think that he believes Seattle's offensive line would help him secure his next contract just because they're not as good as the Cleveland Browns offensive line. And when we talk about the Cleveland Browns, I don't think a trade will happen, but I wouldn't be too surprised by it. First of all, I don't think they have any incentive to trade for him. They're the primary favorites to get him. And normally, when you trade for a player, it's because you might not believe he comes to you on the open market. The Cleveland Browns have the best infrastructure around their quarterback. And so I think Jimmy Garoppolo would be more inclined to go there because he can, first of all, get money. They have $48 million in salary or in cap space still available after the move of Baker Mayfield, more than double of the next team. Second of all, he gets a starting opportunity. And third of all, he's around one of the best offensive lines in the league, one of the best running back groups in the league, and has a true wide receiver one like he had in San Francisco and Amari Cooper over there in Cleveland, with the potential to add more to that wide receiver room as well. So I personally don't think a trade market will materialize. But like I said, Cleveland has the money to shoulder it. It's all just a matter of, does San Francisco eat money in this deal, which I definitely would not like, and does San Francisco get adequate compensation in return after seeing what the compensation for Baker Mayfield was?
Absolutely. And Beto from Niners Sickness is on. Beto, I don't know if you caught the beginning, but we unleashed the intro video that we made for you, man. Gave you a lot of props for it. Thank you so much for that. And definitely go subscribe to Niners Sickness. He has a great YouTube channel over there. And, one of the nicest guys in the 49er community. Just a good guy, man. Great story. Love that I had an opportunity to meet him, and he's already helped me out quite a bit. So thank you, Beto, for being in the show. Yeah, I mean, sorry, Rohan, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, shout out to him. Yeah, great guy too. He's just a chill guy that you can kick it with.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you, man. I really don't see a path to where Jimmy Garoppolo is traded at this point. I completely agree with you as far as your analysis of the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think they're looking to win now. I mean, one, they haven't re-signed DK Metcalf, right? So that is, still there. They're not, in any rush to do that. They traded away their best player in Russell Wilson. They got a bunch of draft picks for that. Like you said, this upcoming draft is one of the drafts where, similar to the draft a few years ago, the one that we got Trey in, is a very good quarterback class. Like, a lot of people are looking and seeing that class with multiple bona fide high level starters that are going to be coming into the league. So I think that if you're Pete Carroll, you're looking for your ability to win back that team, right? You want to build that team again back in your mold, because I think there was a lot of friction between him and Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson had become a superstar in the league. So Pete Carroll couldn't just, throw his weight around anymore. And I think Pete Carroll's trying to get back to that. The issue with only having one option now is what is the benefit right now for Cleveland to give up an asset? Like, I don't think they want to take on the contract. And I don't think the 49ers want to pay any of that contract either. So it really doesn't make sense at this point why there would be a trade. Like, Cleveland isn't desperate. At the end of the day, they already have another quarterback on the books that they're paying in Jacoby Brissett. They're already paying $10 million towards Baker Mayfield's contract. I don't know exactly how much they're paying towards Deshaun Watson, but I know based off of that contract and that it's fully guaranteed, it's a lot of money. And then they want to pay, even if you have $48 million, do you want to really use 25 of that $48 million towards a quarterback that isn't going to be part of your future? Or would you rather just roll over that $48 million into next season and use that to really bring in, you use that in the free agent market or to help your cap out in the future? I really just think that they'd rather just wait and see if the 49ers cut him and then get Jimmy Garoppolo on whatever contract they want to offer Jimmy Garoppolo. So for me, I think when we've talked about this earlier, Rohan, I said, I'm pretty sure he gets cut, because I just think that at this point, the 49ers would rather have that $25 million to roll over into next offseason, specifically because they have so many free agents after this year, rather than keeping Jimmy. But my question to you is, we've also heard the 49ers talk about they're not going to give Jimmy up for nothing. And they've already allotted money to be able to pay for him if they needed to keep him. Now, we thought that was just conjecture and just kind of posturing to be able to maybe get some more on the trade market. However, those games are over, right? You there's no way to build up Jimmy's value at this point. How much do you believe Shanahan and Lynch when they say these things? Is there a possibility that Jimmy Garoppolo is going in to week 1 on the roster for the 49ers?
And before I answer that question, on your point about the cut, the one reason that I said I wouldn't be surprised, and I'll just say this to see what you think. Jose Sanchez of all 49ers SI tweeted something today that caught my attention, and I actually agree with. There is one way I think that the 49ers do end up trading Jimmy Garoppolo to a team like the Cleveland Browns. Now, the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo are in an impasse because his salary for this year is non-guaranteed. The entirety of the $24.2 million that he is owed in salary is non-guaranteed, meaning the 49ers can cut him right before week 1 and not have to pay anything to Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo, that would be his worst nightmare because guess what? You don't have a team before week 1, and you don't have the entirety of training camp to integrate yourself in another team's offense to get the ball rolling starting week 1. Now, saying that, the Cleveland Browns, if they don't believe Jacoby Brissett is the answer, which goes against what we've heard so far from Ian Rappaport, who says the Cleveland Browns are confident in Jacoby Brissett, if they don't believe he's the answer to start this year, the Cleveland Browns could look to trade Jimmy Garoppolo for the sole reason of getting him earlier than that end of the training camp deadline, because then they have the 2 weeks of practice where they can implement Jimmy Garoppolo into their offense, which shouldn't be too hard given the similarities between Kyle Shanahan and Kevin Stefanski's offense. That could be the 2 week trial period where you get involved with your offensive line, you get involved with your wide receivers. That is the one instance where I can see Garoppolo getting traded. If Cleveland needs a quarterback because they don't believe Brissett can lead them to a playoff contending team in 2022, because I think even though you can wait for another year when Deshaun Watson is healthy, I think in the NFL, the championship window gets slimmer and slimmer by the year. I think you have to attack every single opportunity. And even if Garoppolo isn't your quarterback next year, he provides you the chance to give you a playoff contending team this year, which the Cleveland Browns, I think, are looking to take, especially after missing the playoffs in last year. Because guess what? With the salary cap explosion, with the amount of cap space that they're set to have, they might be able to attract free agents. And it's likelier that they get big name free agents if they make the playoffs as opposed to missing out in a competitive division. So that's where I can see the Cleveland Browns potentially trading for Jimmy Garoppolo. But then again, that means the 49ers wouldn't do right by their player if that's not the case by releasing him after training camp as opposed to once he's healthy for Jimmy Garoppolo, which I'm fine with. But also that means that they wouldn't be confident in Jacoby Brissett, which goes against the status quo, and that the 49ers and then the Cleveland Browns can come to an agreement not only on how much money Jimmy Garoppolo gets paid by the Cleveland Browns, but also compensation, which the 49ers have been stubborn about.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some good points that are being made because I think all of that is in an ideal situation, but there are a few things that dominoes need to fall first. And the first one is what Beto's saying. Jimmy needs to start throwing the ball, right? We haven't seen any videos of Jimmy throwing the ball. I'm sure teams haven't seen any videos of Jimmy throwing the ball. I think they need to, when those videos start coming out of Jimmy, throwing the ball around and seeing, hey, what the velocity looks like. How does his throwing motion look like? How does he look overall? That might change the market. But Fernando says something as well that might play a big role. What happens with Deshaun Watson, right? What if Deshaun Watson isn't suspended for a year and he might only be suspended for 6 games? I think that kills the market for Jimmy then with Cleveland, right? Yeah. Because at that point, you'd rather just go with Jacoby Brissett. You mentioned, there are reports from guys like Ian Rappaport that Jacoby Brissett is somebody that Cleveland is willing to ride with if it's just a short-term, 6 games or so like that. And then, they'll have Deshaun Watson. Why would you invest $24 million and an asset in somebody where you probably don't even need him? You only need him for the first 6 games. And if you're going a healthy Jacoby Brissett versus Jimmy Garoppolo, higher contract, need to give an asset up, plus is coming off of shoulder surgery, I'm going with Jacoby Brissett all day in that situation. So,
real quick, just to add to that, before you continue, who do the Browns play in the first 6 weeks? it's not that hard of a schedule. You play Carolina, which is going to be interesting, but you play the New York Jets, you play the Steelers, who likely will be fourth place in that division. You play the Atlanta Falcons. That is four fairly beatable or viable opponents, even with Jacoby Brissett, before you face the Los Angeles Chargers and the New England Patriots. So they could end up being 4-2 with Jacoby Brissett. So that's a good point, but continue on.
No, I mean, but that leads me, and I think Andrew, thank you so much for coming on. A real big, a guy that always is supporting us content creators. But I know Andrew is a big proponent for Jimmy Garoppolo, and I can't be mad at him, even though I really think that having Jimmy on this roster is just going to be toxic. Not because Jimmy's toxic, not because Trey's toxic, not even because the locker room's toxic. I just think it's a really bad look for how the coaching staff, especially Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, have just openly discussed how much they wanted to trade Jimmy. And I just think that's a tough look for Jimmy to have to come back and fight for a position there. I just don't know at this point. I just don't know at this point, like cutting him is just, it's tough because at the end of the day, Jimmy is better than Nate Sudfeld as far as, in the hierarchy of quarterbacks. But is Jimmy going to be willing to sit on the bench and be a backup for a team that he's taken to 2 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl in the last 3 years? That's just really tough at this point, with all really no real options there.
Yeah, and that leads to your original question. I forgot. Rephrase it and tell me what you were asking before we went back in a tangent about the.
Yeah, I mean, just is there a scenario where Jimmy Garoppolo's a 49er come week 1?
One thing Kyle Shanahan has told us, or not told us, but really taught us with his actions, he can never say never. I thought there was 100% 100% chance that Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be moved by March 16th, the start of the new league year. But then again, never say never. Trade talks halted. I think he honestly would have been traded had he not gotten that surgery just a week before free agency. But really, you never say never, because right now, I don't know if Nick Bosa is going to be extended with the roster. I think Deebo Samuel will be extended, but I think Nick Bosa might want to wait. But regardless, I think you can still fit both extensions in with the 2022 cap with minimal moves, if not any moves required. You might need to make one move as a salary cap for salary cap help with the current. You might even need to make a single move. So if we're just talking salary cap semantics, right now the 49ers have proven that they can roster a sufficient a sufficient talent on both sides of the ball with Jimmy Garoppolo still being on the team. And like you said, he is a better backup than Nate Sudfeld. The one thing that I'll say to that is, where do you see in the NFL where there's such superior backup quarterbacks, right? Normally, regardless of how the talent is at quarterback, every single team's season is predicated on their starting quarterback success. And while the backup quarterback has played an important role, obviously Nick Foles back in 2017, really, in my opinion, starting quarterbacks, if they're gone, your season is over. And so does that philosophy justify paying Jimmy Garoppolo that amount of money, hindering not only other roster moves? Maybe you might even have to make another roster move to accommodate salaries, like I said, but also hindering the carryover for next year, where you could have saved 25 more million in a year where you might want to spend even more, because 2023 might be that year for Trey Lance when he's fully developed to go for a championship, and you lose out on that money because you're having Jimmy Garoppolo in the roster. And so it's things like that. It is a tough decision because there is benefit, right, with keeping him. You get a backup quarterback on a salary that you've already accommodated for, and you get a comp pick, right, that third-round compensatory pick, which somehow the 49ers do seem to value.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be the highest pick that you'd get in any kind of trade at this point as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, we could go on for this for, hours. I mean, I still think that the best situation is 49ers cutting him, because I really think that the locker room would just be not good. And I want Trey to not have any battle for first. He needs all the reps. Like Trey is the future. You've already given up so many picks for him. You've created a new coaching staff around him. He just needs all the starts, all the reps at this point, all the starts at this point. And I think that 24 million is going to be very important. There's a lot of good players on this team, Rohan, that are on 1-year deals or their contract is up after this year. So having an extra 48 million to work with next offseason, I think will be very, very important. So,
and not only that, last point that I'll make on this topic before we move on is you said Trey Lance needs reps. But guess what? If Jimmy Garoppolo is playing during training camp, where does he take away? He takes away from Nate Sudfeld and he takes away from Brock Purdy. Right now, the one thing about those two quarterbacks, they haven't gotten reps at all. Nate Sudfeld was a practice squad quarterback last year. He hasn't played with the first or the second team. He's played with the third team for the majority of his 49ers career. This year was the first time where he was the second team quarterback, and he hasn't gotten enough reps either. He only got reps in OTAs. I think he needs more reps as his second team quarterback, and that's the only way where you'll find out, can this guy truly be our backup quarterback for 2022? So if you for some reason want to keep Garoppolo, I think you hold him out of everything. Training camp, preseason, get Sudfeld the reps that he needs, get Purdy the reps that he needs. And if one of them prove viable, guess what? You move on from Garoppolo, install that guy as your second quarterback. If one of them doesn't prove viable, if neither of them do, then maybe you have a discussion about that. But still, like you, I agree that the best situation is just to become.
I love it. There was some IG news from 49er wide receivers, and it wasn't bad news for once, all right? So, I know people are split on how important IG is and social media is and all this kind of stuff, but we are in the day and age of social media. Young bucks like you, Rohan, pay attention to it a lot more than old people like me. But there was, I guess, a picture that Brandon Ayuk put up of both Debo and him talking about who the best best wide receiver duo is in the league. Yeah. Brandon Ayuk posted up the picture and tagged, Debo in it and says, "I like us," or something along that line. And Debo responds back in his story is, something positive with a snake and then a fingers crossed sign. So does this mean anything to my resident millennial, Rohan? Does this mean anything in Instagram talk, or is this much ado about nothing?
That boy coming back. Give him the money. That boy. That's all that means. That's all that matters, bro. That boy coming back. But I mean, if we're talking like, yeah, Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, it's good to see them. Obviously, we know that they're good friends. Obviously, we've seen the interaction between them before. But it's good to see them talking live on social media in front of everybody, right? Talking about how they want to repeat. I mean, Debo Samuel over the last couple of months after the trade request and all that has expressed desire, right, to return to the 49ers, be it showing up at training camp or showing up at mini camp, his social media stuff, and things like this. So to me, I mean, I think Debo Samuel will return to the 49ers. I think many people now just expect it to happen. We've got about 3 weeks left before training camp starts, and I think Debo Samuel will get signed closer to the end of the 3-week period near training camps beginning. I think that now everything is set for the 49ers. You have the contracts that have already happened. You had the McLaurin extension alongside the A.J. Brown extension to set as parameters for the Debo deal. Now you have the numbers to figure out what you want to do with this deal, be it a 3-year deal, be it a 4-year deal. I think this deal, it's just coming up to semantics. And I mean, negotiating takes time, right? Do you want what type of deal do you want? The amount of guarantees and all that kind of stuff. So I do think this deal ends up happening. I think the next time Debo Samuel steps on a field, he'll have his contract ready.
Yeah, and I mean, this is another, I guess, point of reference to show that this never had anything to do about the players on the team or I think the team overall. This was strictly a financial thing. This is strictly all negotiating tactics because Debo wants to make sure that he's not playing on the same rookie deal that he's been playing on for the last 4 years. He's clearly outpaid his contract. He wants to make sure that he's taking care of his family and putting them, setting themselves up for the rest of their life. And that was what this was all about. Whether or not you agree with the way that Debo went about it, you got to feel for his intentions because he definitely knows that, he's a little bit of an older um, receiver compared to the other receivers in his draft class. He's, I think, outplayed all the receivers in his draft class. And he's been underpaid for the amount of impact that he's had for the 49ers. So it's nice to see that this is like, I think, the first tweet or Instagram post that really kind of gave some signals that he wants to come back, right? He wants to play with these guys. He hasn't been really responding to his teammates too much in social media, and not because his teammates weren't really shouting him out either. They kind of respected the negotiations, but now I think this kind of is a signal that everybody knows it's all good. And so Brandon Ayuk throws it out. Debo responds with the crossed fingers, like, let's hope that it happens. And I think we all know that the 49ers know it'll be criminal to not bring Debo back on an extension. And I don't think they make that mistake.
Yeah, and one other thing, like we don't always hear chatter before the thing happens, right? Hell, the Baker Mayfield news this morning. I'm a late guy to get up, right? I woke up at probably like 10:45 this morning, and then I wake up and it says on my phone the first notification 1 minute ago, this guy Baker Mayfield gets traded to the Carolina Panthers. So I'm just waiting for that day where I wake up, just groggy-eyed, look at my phone, and it says Debo Samuel signed his 4-year extension with the 49ers. That's all I'm waiting for. But I mean, it just shows that we don't necessarily need traction, that like public traction, and the 49ers don't always give public traction, right? They're one of the organizations to kind of hide it and then just release the details when the details come. So I'm expecting it. I don't know. I don't think it'll happen sooner than later because we still got 3 weeks. But I mean, I think everyone would be happier if it's sooner than later. And it really depends on how DK's situation's going, right? Because if DK Metcalf doesn't begin training camp with a deal, then the 49ers, I think, are better because DK Metcalf will probably get the most money out of all of them if he's the last one to be paid. But if DK Metcalf gets his deal, then I think Debo Samuel just gets a little more money and that situation's resolved. I cannot hear you.
It helps if my mic's not muted, right? But one of the things, we've always talked, a lot of talk is about the personnel that's added through the draft and free agency. But this year, the 49ers actually made a lot of changes to the coaching staff as well. And, I wanted to kind of talk to you about some of your opinions of the guys that they brought in. And one of the biggest changes that they made was bringing in a new special teams coordinator in Brian Schneider.
Yeah.
What do you think Brian Schneider brings to the 49ers as the new special teams coordinator?
Yeah. So, I mean, before I go specifically on Schneider, I just want to give some remarks on the 2021 49ers, right? When you look at this team on paper, you don't necessarily expect them to have as worse of a special teams unit as they did last year. They had Robbie Gould, they had Mitch Wishnowsky, both of whom performed at a fairly high level. I think Mitch Wishnowsky was a Pro Bowl alternate. He had a couple of bad weeks, but he was a Pro Bowl alternate last year, and Gould was pretty good. Good as Gould as always. And when you look at the rest of the team, right, you had Trent Sherfield, who was signed to specifically be a gunner. He was signed elsewhere because he was a good gunner last year. You had a guy in Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles, who's just been there and been a pretty good coverage guy over the last couple of years. And then, overall, I think the roster wasn't as bad as it seems. But when you look at the efficiency in terms of DVOA in terms of not DVOA, but in terms of EPA, the 49ers were the worst kick return team in the NFL. They were the sixth worst kickoff team in the NFL. And punt return, they were 18th. So really, overall, they were in the bottom quarter in terms of teams or in terms of special teams value, according to DVOA, according to EPA, according to all the advanced statistics. Now, fast forward to Brian Schneider. Brian Schneider in the 2010s, when he was with the Seattle Seahawks, had a good amount of good units. In 2010, 2012, 2013, and 2015, all 4 years he had top 3 or top 5 units in the NFL. Then on the other years, he had middling units, but normally units. One thing you'll realize: normally units aren't necessarily indicative of a coach. or sorry, performance isn't indicative of the coach, but the unit, right? It's only when you have a good unit and have bad results that it's indicative of the coach, like it was with Richard Hightower in 2021. Brian Schneider, when obviously some of the talent went away, the units start to slide. But when you have good units, guess what? What does a good coach do? He puts that, utilizes the good units to good use. And that's what Brian Schneider did with the Seattle Seahawks. One other thing that is really important to me, Brian Schneider with the Seattle Seahawks in those 11 years, from 20 or 10 years, from 2010 to 2019, his units ranked second in the NFL in block kicks and fifth in the amount of touchdowns and safeties recorded. When is the last time the 49ers had a punt return touchdown? It was Ted Ginn back, I think, 10 years ago. It was Ted Ginn. We haven't had one since. And Brian Schneider, for those looking for the splash plays, Brian Schneider, in his tenure with the Seahawks, provided them. Now, all the logic and all the semantics are all based on him. So obviously that's yet to be seen. But for the 49ers in 2022, why are we optimistic? Because we have a good unit. We brought in the three guys that Brian Schneider wanted in Oren Burks as that linebacker guy that can tackle, George Odom, one of the best tackling safeties and one of the best tacklers in the NFL, period. He was an all-pro in 2020. And then Ray McLeod, the returner that can provide the explosiveness that's required, which the 49ers have lacked for the last 10 years at that unit. So to me, Brian Schneider has provided the pedigree. He has shown results with good units. And the only thing the 49ers needed for Brian Schneider to succeed was provide him with the good unit, which they have done so far this offseason.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, another thing, he was early in his career, he was special teams coordinator for the Raiders. And when he had a guy like Shane Lechler there, and Shane Lechler made the Pro Bowl both years that he was the special teams coordinator there. Now, how much does Brian Schneider play into that? I don't know, but it does show that he can at least maximize talent and get them to be able to, perform at a high level. We have seen coaches be able to take away from that, right? But, to be able to at least not get in the way, because Shane Lechler is Shane Lechler. He, had a really strong foot. I mean, you mentioned it. The Seahawks special teams in his tenure from 2010 to 2019 ranked second in the NFL in block kicks, fifth in touchdowns and safeties recorded during that tenure. So what does that mean? Well, that means that, one, he's either worked with really good talent, been able to notice what really good talent is, and then also maximize when he has really good talent on the team. So the fact that he, like you said, rated 3 players there as his top people that he would want to go after, and the 49ers gave him all of that. Let's not forget, it's not like the 49ers didn't have good players for special teams as well. I mean, you mentioned Robbie Gould and Mitch Wishnowsky, but my guy, Jordan Willis, we saw what he's capable of as far as blocking
anything and everything.
Exactly. So he's back on the team. They got Demetrius Flanagan-Foles. If he stays on the team, he's another guy that's really good in special teams, plus guys like Dante Johnson and just a whole bunch of young athletic guys that are going to be there. Even a guy like Malik that might make the team. He's been on part of these special teams rosters that have done really well for Seattle. So the team he has all of the weapons that he needs, and he's already proven that with the right weapons, he could put together a really, really good unit. Here is my fear, though, Rohan.
Go for it.
The last 2 years, he hasn't been able to finish the season, right? So in 2020, 2021, he left Seattle for personal issues, family issues and whatnot. Last year, he ended up signing with Jacksonville, and he left midway through the season again, sparking for personal reasons. Now, we all know the expletive show that Jacksonville's coaching situation was there last season. So I don't know if you hold that against him, but these last 2 seasons he has left because of either off the field situations, or maybe it's just not a love for the game. So that is something to be aware of. Do we think that he's going to even finish out this whole year? Well, the last 2 years he hasn't been able to finish out. So if we're looking at just his track record recently, he might not be here for the whole season. What if something else happens? I personally don't know what those off the field issues are. I hope that they are resolved, because you would hate to, obviously they had to be serious enough for him to leave, leave. But that is something to be aware of, because if he does leave for whatever reason, what happens to the special teams at that point?
Yeah, you're right. But one thing that I will say, obviously that's out of our control. If he leaves, he leaves. But one thing I will say is I think his impact will be found. His impact has already been stated on the 49ers players in meetings. Oren Burks and Kyle Juszczyk both pointed out one specific thing. He's upbeat and he's aggressive. And as a special teams coordinator, I think that's important. Kyle Juszczyk said, I feel like we're going to be much more aggressive. We're going to be attacking more and really bringing it to teams as opposed to the other way around, which both felt was a difference from the regime under Richard Hightower. When you look at it, the results have also shown under Schneider's control. He finished 6 times between 2019 and 2010 to 2019 in the top 10 for kick return average, something the 49ers significantly struggled with last year, and also 4 times during that span in punt returns. So he's going to bring that explosive nature to get these big time plays, and he has the track record for doing it. Players have already noticed it. The players have noticed a difference, and I think that that's important. Burks even said, I feel like we're going to be taking a lot of shots in coverage and making sure we've got explosive returns. And like we said earlier, what's the one thing to signify, or what's the one thing to really make sure you have a good unit? Have good personnel, have good players. Because guess what? What do you need when you're explosive? You need a good returner. You need a guy who can create explosive plays. But most importantly, when you're in defense, you need good tacklers. And the 49ers have a ton of those that they brought in this free agency period. Oren Burks, George Odom, and then don't forget guys like Demetrius Fleming Fells and the rest of that linebacking crew. So really, I think we've got both of those things. And to me, especially with Ray McLeod, who overshot Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk had 7.2 yards per return last year. McLeod is at 9.9, which was in the top 5 of the NFL last year in total yards return. He's got all the pieces of the formula, and Schneider has shown before that he can put the pieces together and make something happen with that with his top 10 rankings. So to me, I'm excited. I don't know if this unit is a top 10 unit. I think we'll still be around the middle of the pack just because I'm not expecting such a significant increase after last year. But I do think that we should be a top 15 unit on special teams, which could in reality save us a couple of games this year, which in such a tight schedule and such a tight division and conference is very important for the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, we've never had the special teams really be a weapon under the Kyle Shanahan regime, really. Andrew talks about, he expected Mitch to run for a lot of first downs when he was drafted. Mitch is an athlete, and one thing under Rob Schneider, you saw Seattle would take some shots at going for it with some trick plays, and they burnt 49ers in multiple years on some of those trick plays, and I do expect more of those kind of trick plays to be able to get an extra first down, things that Shanahan hasn't really done in other years. No Border Sports says Mitch needs to throw for a first down, or I want a new punter, and I'm sure that punter he wants is Jason Poe, because he wants Jason Poe at every single position for the 49ers. Brian Schneider wasn't the only coach that was brought in. Rohan, another major move that the 49ers made with Mike McDaniels getting a head coaching job in Miami is Anthony Lynn. So Anthony Lynn obviously is a very experienced coach. He's also been a player in the league, running back in the league. Most of his success has been as a offensive coordinator, running back coordinator, has been a coach and an interim coach in the league and had some success there as well. Pretty much like a 500 coach, when he, as far as his record as a head coach, which, is serviceable, especially for, not an elite coach, but, he has a winning record as a coach. What do you think he brings to this team, especially what do you think he's going to be able to do to this running game, which is his title as far as running back coordinator or running game coordinator?
I think there are a couple of things that he brings. First of all, you talk about the head coaching experience. That's important because Kyle Shanahan has never had a guy in his ear with head coaching experience, with a guy who's been equipped to handle situations that he constantly deals with. And I think that that might be a little helpful. Now, Lynn wasn't the best head coach in terms of decision making, but at least having someone in your corner like that is important, I think, and it provides Kyle Shanahan with something different. But more importantly, Anthony Lynn, what he brings to the 49ers is real NFL experience. The 49ers did something this offseason. They hired Brian Greasy, Anthony Lynn, and Leonard Hankerson as their main skill positions at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, respectfully. And the one thing they all have in common that isn't a norm in the Shanahan regime as coaches is they all played in the NFL. Anthony Lynn obviously played as a running back in the NFL, so he knows what to experience. He knows how to coach running backs specifically. Then, when you talk about his pedigree, Anthony Lynn, with the Los Angeles Chargers, fathomed a passing game under Philip Rivers that was in the top 12 during his years over there every single time. So he knows how to implement a pass game, but more importantly, he also knows how to implement a run game, right? You had Austin Eckler there, who was one of the best pass catching running backs in the NFL. You had Melvin Gordon there, who was one of the better like power backs in the NFL, but also flashed as a pass catcher. Then you go to Detroit, and Detroit doesn't have, or I think their offensive line is pretty good, but it was a developing offensive line last year. You got DeAndre Swift, one of the better, more prolific rushers the year before, into a better pass catcher. He was a top 5 pass catcher as a running back last year. And that wasn't necessarily seen the year before. So Anthony Lynn has this transformation among himself that just makes the offense more prolific, especially out of the backfield. And then he also had his power back in Jamal Williams, who was fairly effective last year as well. Despite injuries to Swift and all, he was still effective. And so to me, he brings the pedigree of having players out of the backfield produce. And it's both in the passing game and in the rushing game. And I think the 49ers have put the pieces around him to where he can make that success happen, even without Bobby Turner this year, right? He has big shoes to fill. Bobby Turner has been one of the best in the business for however long he's been in there. But Anthony Lynn now has potential pass catchers, right? Tyron Davis Price isn't going to be one, but I think most of the other backs, right? If you're talking about a Jeff Wilson Jr., more importantly, a Jordan Mason who could potentially make the roster, or even an Elijah Mitchell who flashed last year with a good amount of catches out of the backfield. I think all three could be pass catching backs, and I think Anthony Lynn could create opportunities for those three. On top of that, I think Anthony Lynn could just make the team better inside the tackles, right? That's something that they might have to focus on more. No, we've talked about that before. That's something they might be more suited for now, and Anthony Lynn has shown success with that. So while the 49ers might not have the personnel for as good as they have the personnel for the outside because their tackles are better, I think that Anthony Lynn might help in that range as well. So there are several factors. I thought this was their best hire of the entire offseason.
Yeah, and I mean, there's two things I really look for that Anthony Lynn has been able to bring pretty much to every team that he's had. One thing that I think he's had a lot more experience with than Kyle Shanahan has is a quarterback that also has the athletic ability of a guy like Trey Lance, right? We saw him with Tyrod Taylor in Buffalo, get the best out of Tyrod Taylor, and really been probably the coach that caused Tyrod Taylor to have such a long career in the NFL as a backup, and been able to get onto numerous different rosters because of what they saw out of him in Buffalo. Obviously, you talked about Justin Herbert, who came in and he was a quarterback that not only could throw the ball but also used his legs in opportune moments to keep the offense on the field and pick up some yards there as well. That's one thing that I'm excited to see what he's able to do with Trey Lance there, because he's able to know how to utilize that a quarterback to not necessarily have like Lamar Jackson type numbers, because I don't want Trey Lance to turn into Lamar, but he knows how to get that balance of an explosive passing attack with still using a quarterback and utilizing their athleticism to be able to use that as a weapon as well. So that's one thing. The second thing, Rohan, is when he does have a really good running back, that good running back tends to have career numbers when Anthony Lynn is his coach. And just to name a few, Fred Taylor had his career high with over 1,500 yards when he was with Jacksonville under Anthony Lynn in 2003. Also, the Cowboys in 2006, Marion Barber led the NFL with 14 rushing touchdowns, and Julius Jones ran for a career high 1,084 yards under Anthony Lynn when he was the running back coach for the Cowboys. He also had Jamal Lewis with the Browns, and Jamal Lewis was able to post back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons when he was there with Cleveland. And he's also coached guys like LaDainian Tomlinson, Danny Woodhead, Thomas Jones, Bilal Powell, John Green, all with the Jets, who all had, pretty decent numbers or was able to get the most out of them. So Anthony Lynn, when he has a very talented back, is able to take them to the next level and have career years. Now, I do believe Elijah Mitchell is a very talented back. We saw what he was able to do in only 11 games last season. Elijah Mitchell is a guy who is very fast, runs a 4.3 40, very good with the ball, hasn't fumbled the ball, didn't fumble the ball at all last season, didn't fumble the ball at all in his college career. So I want to transition to this, and you could tie in Anthony Lynn and also this, but what do you think Anthony Lynn is going to be able to do with the talent like Elijah Mitchell? And what are your expectations of Elijah Mitchell in this offense with a coach like Anthony Lynn, who's proven to be able to get the best out of talented backs?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, when we talk about Elijah Mitchell, hell of a rookie season, right? Played in, I think he only started 10 games, played in 11 games, 963 yards on 207 carries, great amount of volume, tremendous if you're considering how the 49ers normally play their running backs. And he was fairly efficient, 4.7 yards per carry, more importantly, 2.5 yards after the first contact. So he fought through contact. He got a good amount of yards per carry and a good amount of yards in such a small amount of games, right? For me, the one thing I want from Elijah Mitchell this year is to remain healthy. Suffered several injuries last year, and for that purpose, for that reason, he solely bulked up to try and get to 220 pounds this year, so that he could shoulder the amount of hits that he was getting last year and stay healthy for the remainder of this year. I think that that's important. But also, I also shout out, Ready, bro. But also,
Ready!
There we go. But also, one thing that I want from Elijah Mitchell is can we see that speed, right? He ran a 4.39 at the combine. I don't think that that's his play speed, but I do think that his speed has been somewhat limited from the injuries. So, in a way, as a domino, I want to see if that speed can be somewhat replicated next year. Obviously, because you have Trent Williams and you run very successfully behind Trent Williams, and the 49ers have shown that they can do that last year. Elijah Mitchell had much of a success behind Trent Williams last year. And I think that if you have the speed to be able to hit the outside zone a lot, it just further amplifies your offense, because then you can run the inside power, then you can run the outside zone. You have all of it combined into one. And also, one thing that I want to see from Elijah Mitchell this year, while I don't know if he'll reach over 1,000 yards just because the 49ers have more bodies this year in the running game that probably have a bigger impact, I do want to see an increased receiving role, right? I want to see a little more from him. Like you said, he has surefire hands. He doesn't fumble. And I think that that also translates to his receiving game. I don't think he had many drops last year. And so to me, I think that Elijah Mitchell, the one thing that I want from him is to see not only him being healthy, but him also being a little more featured in the receiving game as the 49ers try and branch out their offense to include running backs.
I'm trying to check this real quick.
Ooh, you did?
Wow, guys, I appreciate you. We are at 900 subscribers, so thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate all of you guys. Dusty Gold for joining in. Riddy Music, thank you so much for doing that, and obviously Fernando, thank you so much for always supporting. But I agree, and Rohan, the thing that I'm really looking at, I kind of push back. I do think Elijah Mitchell is going to have well over 1,000 yards this year. And I think he's actually going to do it on less opportunities. And the reason why I think is going to happen is one of the reasons that I think played a role in his injuries is just his overusage, right? Shanahan didn't really trust anybody else in that running back room other than Elijah Mitchell. And I think that kind of was a detriment to him because they gave him such a heavy load, right? So the bodies in there, I think, is actually going to improve Elijah Mitchell's efficiency to be able to have that 4.39 speed, to be able to actually utilize that burst versus having to be tired because you're the one taking all the reps, plus you're in there, on third downs, doing the pass protection and all that kind of stuff. So I think giving him less reps and really being able to maximize those reps, it is going to keep him healthy. And if he just stays healthy, Rohan, we already know based off of his performance that he'll be able to have 1,000-yard season if he's able to play all 17 games. I think that's light work for him, right? The other reason why I think he's going to maximize is because Trey Lance effect on the Trey Lance effect on this rushing attack, where he might not be able to, because we already know he's good between the tackles because that's what we really saw him do. The issue with outside the tackles is if he doesn't have that speed, right? Let's just agree with you and say he doesn't have that speed to really get off. And maybe the blocking isn't there because the offensive line may or may not be good this offseason or this season. Trey Lance is that extra second or extra half second that he's going to need to be able to get to the outside, right? Because now that outside or that inside linebacker or defensive lineman has to read what Trey Lance is doing. And if they go after Trey Lance, that gives Elijah Mitchell that extra half second to be able to get to the outside. And I think when he's out, if he's one-on-one with a defender, I think he has enough speed to beat that guy and enough vision and enough moves to be able to beat that and then off to the races, right? So I think that I do expect a really, really big year out of Elijah Mitchell because, one, I think that they finally gave him help with Trey Sermon, TDP, and whoever else they add to that running back room is going to be able to keep him fresh versus just give him the ball all the time like they did last season. And the additions of Anthony Lynn as the coach, who we know has been able to get the best out of talented running backs that he's had, as well as Trey Lance being able to buy him some more time in the rushing attack. To me, that just is a mixture and a recipe for just a huge year for Elijah Mitchell. I think he'll be one of the top 10 backs this year. And I think especially in like fantasy, I think he's going to be one of the best running backs in fantasy. I just expect him to really put up monster numbers and really be, pushing maybe even a Pro Bowler this year, man. I just think everything is lining up for him to really just break out this season.
Interesting. I do think I like your analysis. I'd be very happy if the yards per attempt increase, and I do think he does reach over 1,000 all-purpose yards. The only reason why I don't know if I think he could very much reach 1,000 rushing. The only reason I don't know if he will is just because will he get the sheer volume to do so, right? You'll probably need, for 1,000, you probably need around 200 rushes. And with the amount that he played last year, I don't know if that is sustainable. But then again, there's another game, right? So you get more opportunities. I do definitely think he'll reach 1,000 all-purpose yards. He had 19 catches on 20 targets last year. Catch percentage of 95%. And I don't think that he had a single drop either last year. So to me, or maybe I think he had the one miss was a drop, but that percentage to me is very good. I think Elijah Mitchell should be featured more in the receiving game and in the running game, like you said, should make him a very primary player for the 49ers this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll get close to 1,200 yards on the ground because I truly, he's already a guy that was averaging 4.6 yards per carry, and like I said, his numbers last year, he rushed over 800 yards. That was missing 6 games, Rohan. So I think that even if you lower his attempts per game, if you give him 6 other games with the extra attempts, to me, that puts him well over 1,000 yards, maybe even double-digit touchdowns. I really think he's going to be a huge part of this rushing attack. And like I said, I think the combination of Anthony Lynn, Trey Lance, McGlinchey coming back, I think that's going to help a lot as well. I really expect big things out of this running game because I do think based off of the moves that Kyle Shanahan has made, he's going back to run first, power. Like they're going to be running the ball way more than they pass the ball. And I think that bodes well when Elijah Mitchell is the captain and the best running back in that running back room.
Yeah, I agree.
Boom, Rohan, we finished the show, my dude. I want to give you some time. I do want to thank you as well, Rohan. You've been, during this offseason, man, my number one go-to guy. I love the relationship we built on this show, man, and through this show. And, we talk pretty much every single day about not even 49er stuff, and I really enjoy that as well. But I do want you guys, I thank you so much for helping me reach 900 through this show. But Rohan is another guy that I think is very, very underrated. Much like a lot of you guys say I am. People don't really know about me. I think Rohan's even better than me. So please, please, please go support him. I know it's a little bit tough sometimes, but if you just go through the description, click on his link, please subscribe to his channel, and let's try to get him doubled up on his subscribers and to that 500 mark before the season starts. That'd be amazing. But Rohan, let's talk a little bit about what you got going on for the rest of the week and what these guys could, find about you this week.
Yeah, and I mean, before I start, you say we talk every day, and then you didn't respond to my UFC text, man.
Bro, I was asleep, bro. It's work week. It's a work day, bro. I'm not on vacation like you are, dude.
To the point where you probably could text and I wouldn't even recognize that you responded the day after. What I'm doing this week, guys, I am on a plane tomorrow, but I have set up videos, so make sure you're checked out to the channel because you're going to get little clips of certain videos that I'll be talking about that are hitting all the major topics. We talked about Jimmy Garoppolo. Go check my video from earlier today where I break down all of the Jimmy Garoppolo stuff, the cases in which he could be traded, the cases in which he could be released, the traces in which he could remain with the 49ers, and all of that, and talking about the most realistic stuff. Be sure to check that out, but be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll have videos out every single day, and also make sure to check out 49ers Web Zone. Check out my articles there. That's where I'm posting a lot of daily content. But as always, Sunil, thank you so much for bringing me on the channel. We'll be back soon with some more content. And I think it is stay safe, stay hydrated, and I don't know the last one.
Have a great night. We'll talk to you soon. Before I sign off, I do got to give a shout out to Amin the Dream, another Desi boy like us. I remember Amin helped me get to 500. We got to 500 during one of his shows. Now we got to 900, Amin. So I appreciate you being there. Another guy that needs to get a shout out is our guy, Crypto Ryan. Appreciate everything that you do. Dusty Gold, man, you've been a big support as well. Appreciate all you guys, man. I'm really grateful. I really feel a lot of love from you guys. And it's been, I just want to tell you guys that are maybe some of you guys in the comment section that are, content creators or budding content creators. It's tough, man. Like some of us, I think we see a lot of these guys that blow up really quick. Obviously, the Godfather himself, Grant, who's really helped all of us get put on and stuff like that. A lot of these guys have. Go ahead.
Shout out to Grant, man.
Yeah. A lot of these guys have other things that we don't really have. We're kind of building it just from scratch. So any help that we get from those guys is great. But I do want to say, man, it's a very, very long journey, slow journey, but just stick to it. Be consistent. You find great guys and great talent and great partners like Rohan, the guys that I mentioned in the chat section, guys like Jesse, Jack, and, we're all willing to help each other. If you guys need any help, please DM me, DM Rohan. We're all both willing to go on anybody's show and help out. But really, really appreciate you guys. I just want to know that, I love it, man. I really do this stuff for fun. And it really has enhanced my life, man. I'm a lot happier dude because I get a chance to talk to you guys about 49ers and sports and all that kind of stuff. So just wanted to give my little 2 cents before we sign off. Love you, Rohan. Thank you so much. All of you guys in the comment section, you guys always keep it lit. I might be on later on this week, throwing some stuff down. Me and Rohan might work together this weekend, doing some fun kind of like fantasy draft type stuff with the 49ers. But like Rohan said, I want to get it out, bro. Stay safe, stay hydrated, and have a very, very great night. We'll talk again very soon.